Hi, everybody, and welcome to this Vital Living Forum where we'll discuss senior safety. Today, we're focusing on how to reduce your risk of becoming a victim in the home and in the community. We'll also give you tips on how to effectively report crimes to law enforcement. I'm Clarence Reynolds, and joining me are Sergeant Jules Brace and Master Deputy Stanley Murray with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to you both. You know, the news media really does highlight a lot of crime, but how likely is it that a senior is going to become the victim of crime here in Central Florida?
I would say it's very, very possible with the amount of seniors that we have that are most of their children or even their grandchildren may not even be in the area. We have a lot of people that move down from various states, other parts of the country, and so they're kind of just trying to find a way to gel and meld in with other neighbors and things like that. So it's very common that sometimes the decisions they may make without some counseling or assistance in doing those decisions, especially in their finances.
Mm-hmm. And we talk about there are two kinds of crime, people who are in their home and then people who are out in the community, you know, doing things, shopping, walking. So let's talk about at home. What kinds of crimes do seniors face potentially when they're at home?
Well, the most common that's kind of occurring right now is the scamming. Basically what happens is they will come in, pretend to be a working company, some of the utility companies or some of the cable companies, and they'll distract them. They'll get them inside and they'll kind of try to show them different things in the home. And while they're doing that, someone else is going through their home. They may come out in during hurricane times or seasons where your trees are falling or need work. They'll come out and take them outside of their home in the backyards, and then someone is rummaging through their home while they're outside. So those type of things happen very, very commonly. And so we try to direct people into making sure that they're putting away the private things, including their mail. That's one of the most prominent things people will take is identity theft.
And I think one of the issues is a lot of seniors may live alone and have family members that come in and check on them. So when you're talking about criminals in the community, they tend to target people that are alone in the home. Because as Stanley's discussing right here, if they realize that the seniors are alone, then they can do diversion scams and other types of scams to target the seniors. So that's why we encourage that the seniors have somebody that checks in on them regularly, stay active, you know, with friends and people in the community. And it's just a matter of looking out for each other, whether that be neighbors, people in the church, or some other means or mechanism that somebody's keeping an eye on the seniors, especially when they're living alone.
So if you actually do need to have your driveway fixed or you have to have some branches cut down in the backyard, what are the best ways to protect yourself from this? First of all, do we even let people walk up to our homes unsolicited for that kind of work? Or should we only deal with people that we reached out to first?
Well, you know, me being an older gentleman now, I've always been learned to believe that things based on relationships. The better relationship, the better things tend to end up. So we try to encourage our residents that, you know, if you want to get some trees cut or whatever, maybe speak with your neighbor or one of the person that you're close with, or family members, or coworkers, or former coworkers, who may have used those type of services, and then you would have a credible. At the end of the day, no matter what marketing tool you use, the most common is word of mouth. If you tell me about a store, I'm really going there because you told me, not because I really have read up on it or did those things like that. So for those people who do live alone, we just really encourage them to try to find some way to build a relationship, find some senior active groups that are doing things, because in those groups, there's a lot of knowledge that can be transferred to you.
And I would say definitely be suspicious of unsolicited people coming into your home or coming to your home, trying to do services. I think the safer route is, as Stanley just mentioned, you know, word of mouth or through connections or a verified source.
Somebody who knows somebody.
Nobody that knows somebody.
Right. Yes. One of the most effective ways for seniors to stay safe is to vary their patterns, their activities, their behaviors. What are some of the things that a senior can do to accomplish making it look like they're not on a pattern schedule, so that their homes don't become vulnerable, they don't become vulnerable?
Well, sometimes that's a challenge, because over time we build patterns. If you work the same way for 30 years, you'll still get up at 5 a.m. If you're used to getting up at 5 a.m., you'll still make that same set of coffee the way you make that same set of coffee. You'll still want to listen to your favorite radio station or your favorite song before you head out. So we just try to encourage people that every now and then, change it up a little bit. Maybe if you know that you normally go to a certain place at 10 a.m., maybe you may reschedule the appointment to another date or another time that works for you. On your way home, maybe stop. Don't always just drive home. There are so many people that are being followed. I was just speaking with someone earlier who was talking about a person was being followed, and they took it upon themselves to, I guess, be the police, so to speak, decided to wait in the parking lot for the person to come, and then they start following the person who was following them. Not quite the safest way to handle
Right.
things, but utilizing your law enforcement officials, your taxpayers, we're here, we're 24 hours a day, we're available. And we have many things at the Sheriff's Office that is open and available to them. We have a civilian police academy that is free of charge. We ask people to come out and attend it. It's 12 weeks, one night a week. That gives you all of those safety tips. You learn much more about your community and how the Sheriff's Office operates.
And it's an excellent opportunity, again, to become engaged in the community. I think the complacency leads to stagnation, which leads to routines, and that's something we want to avoid. We have a lot of volunteers at the Sheriff's Office that come in and help us on a volunteer basis that are seniors. So we certainly welcome that at the agency. We appreciate that engagement and that help. So I would say get engaged and vary your routine by remaining active.
You mentioned that a lot of seniors do live alone.
Yes.
And so what are some of the simple things that a senior could do home improvement wise to make their home safer for them and for other family members who might be in the house?
Well, the good thing at the Sheriff's Office, I work in our crime prevention unit, so we actually provide free residential surveys where we will come to your home individually, walk the property with you, start from the outside with your lighting, your landscaping, and we'll talk all the way through into your actual bedrooms on locks and locking systems, security alarms type things you want to look at, what would best work for you. Everybody's home is different, so the basics is trying to figure out what would help you feel safe in those opportune times. And we'll show you some of the things that are really kind of least expensive. We don't always think about the high dollar stuff. There's some small things you can do.
And I think it's good to have that law enforcement eye looking at what's going on at your home. Some things that normal citizens may not be aware of, like lighting, shrubbery, keeping the front doorway clear. Some people have elaborate shrubs and bushes and plants at the front of the door that kind of blocks the view from the street. Again, it's a community effort, so you want to make sure that the neighbors can keep an eye on the front of your house. You want to make sure people coming and going to visit can keep an eye on the front of your house. So you don't want to do anything that obstructs that or cuts down the field of vision at the front of the house.
We talked about a lot of things that you should do. What are some of the things that you should not do?
Well, I think first of all is be complacent. That's the first, is have the mindset that it won't happen here. I kind of grew up in an era where leaving your screen door unlocked, leaving your door unlocked was common. I mean, you just didn't walk in people's home like that, even at night. But now is a time where the average resident in a neighborhood may be 7, 8 years and they move. We grew up in a time where if mother or grandmother died, usually a family member would move in the house. Now, they're selling it. It's on Remax before they even get them to the funeral home, it seems. So a lot goes on in the mindset of how people are living differently. So with that different mindset, your safety and your awareness has to be heightened. So we always encourage them about your mail, not leaving it out in the box for long periods of time, leaving it laying around in your home. You need to find a secure place. Buy you a shredder. When you're done with that bill, shred it. Get your kids or your grandkids or your great-grandkids who happen to be very phenomenal with these phones. They can put a lot of your information that can be locked in, that if you needed to go to your doctor's office, you couldn't remember your medical card number, they could show you how to pull it up and you can have it. There's access to sites and applications now that you don't need as much paper. My mother, who passed away last year, she was very organized, but she had more paper than you could think of. So she wasn't very computer savvy. So with that being said, I always encourage people, don't leave things that are available that someone, if they break into your home, you maybe think they want your television or your weapons, or sometimes they just want your personal information because they know at your age, your credit's probably pretty good. All right, so they can apply for credit cards, they can apply for accounts under your name, and you may not even know it because they'll have it mailing to a P.O. box instead of to your home, and so people are actually operating as you without your knowledge.
Well, we have talked about a lot of things that seniors can do to stay safe in the home. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the things that seniors can do to stay safe in the community. You're watching the Vital Living Forum. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Vital Living Forum. In this segment, we're going to talk about some of the things that a person who is elderly can do when they're out in the community to stay safe. And joining me in this segment again is Sergeant Jules Brace and Master Deputy Stanley Murray with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Thank you both for being with us. I was reading that about 12% of all crimes that happen to seniors is purse snatchings and robberies. Does that mean that elderly people, seniors, are more susceptible to crime than other populations?
Well, let's first by saying that the criminal today is not quite the criminal of yesteryear. The criminal today can be between the ages of 12 and 24 with the type of crimes we're even talking about. So with that being said, the assumption would be that maybe they feel most seniors aren't prepared for
12.
Yes, sir. They feel they're not prepared for that type of ambush, if you will. They probably feel that they would not be able to chase after them due to whatever. But we've seen some things happen where some seniors have made sure they knew that they picked the wrong person. So what we try to do is educate all of our seniors and really all of our residents about awareness when they're parking in the parking lot. Try not to park in a dark area. Try not to park so far out that you have to be solo going to your vehicle. And if you don't feel safe, just tell one of the person that you're working at, hey, do you have someone that can escort me out? Generally, people will try to accommodate most of our seniors, especially here in Orlando. I think we do a pretty good job of that. Also, when you are getting used to habits, a lot of the ladies have purses so big little kids can hide in them. So we tend to tell them, put it in the trunk of your car. If you leave it in your front seat or your back seat one day, you'll leave it 2 days. It becomes a habit, then it becomes a trend. And before you know it, you're walking in and out of your house, leaving those items out. Locking your doors. We had a statistic over the last couple of years where over 70% of vehicles that were broken into, the doors were unlocked. And that had even included those with weapons, with firearms. 70% were taken because someone didn't lock their door. So we're encouraging people to also make sure that when they're out and about, that they have information handy. If something were to happen to them, or they had a stroke or had some form of a diabetes attack, that information is present on their body or it's somewhere that someone can make a phone call for them to make sure that the appropriate people are knowing they're being transported to the hospital.
Yeah, and I would say we can circle back to having that community. So if you have to go somewhere that's busy, travel with a friend and travel with another senior or somebody you're familiar with, because I think the odds go down when you're dealing with more than one person.
Yes.
So from the criminal mindset, if I see one person walking and they appear to be frail or not sturdy, that's a target of opportunity. Whereas if I see 2 or 3 walking, then I may think twice about, trying to snatch or commit that crime of opportunity. So, travel in small packs, travel together. Like Stanley said, be aware of your environment. Because if you look out and there's groups of young people or whatever hanging around, people milling around aimlessly, then you might want to ask somebody to walk with you to the car if you don't feel safe. And that's not just for seniors. We encourage that for anybody in the community. Be aware of what's going on in your environment, and if you see something, say something, is what we say. So yes, that's another means that seniors can do while they're out in the community. Stanley mentioned if you have a medical emergency or something that's pre-existent, we do have the SNAP program, the Special Needs Alert Program, which is simply a bracelet, and we have the brochures available. A bracelet where if you have a special need or condition, you can have that on your person when you're walking around. It doesn't necessarily need to be on a bracelet. You can wear it on your clothing somewhere. And that's helpful to us as first responders, whether it be law enforcement or medical. If there's something going on with you, we'll be looking for that bracelet to say, okay, this person is diabetic, or this person, has Alzheimer's or some other condition. And that can totally change the way we react to you in the heat of the moment. And it can also expedite you getting help.
You mentioned a frail-looking person is a target. How do criminals identify their potential victims? What, in your experience, have you found that they're looking for what they would consider an easy target?
Well, I think first of all, they're looking to see if you're just not paying attention. I think whether you're 6 or 60, if you're not prepared for anything to happen, then you're probably going to be the last person to find out that it happens. So they're looking for people who are maybe occupied. We generally tell people try not to be so much of walking around with phones to their ears and not really paying attention to what's going on in their surroundings. And not that you have to walk around paranoid, but you need to be aware that things do happen. And just because you are a senior doesn't mean everyone respects the hard work you've given to this great nation. So you would always have to keep your mind open. My mom was big about, she didn't carry a purse much. She used to keep her ID and her money. She called it close to her heart. Women know what I'm talking about. And so that's where she kept it.
All right.
I was a little perplexed as a kid, but anyway, with all that being said, I think that limited the attempt for people to think she even had anything on her because of that mindset. So if you know you're going to be shopping, you have a lot of bags, take a couple friends with you, or invite a young man or one of your sons or nephews or one of your church members, your deacons, put them to work. Come pick me up and take me to the store. Things like that eliminates a lot of that misleading that nothing's going to happen.
And I think to follow up on what Stanley was saying, if a criminal or somebody who's looking for a crime of opportunity sees somebody having trouble walking, having trouble getting somewhere, the rest of us, we would go to that individual and help them. Hey, let me help you along. To a criminal, that's a target of opportunity. So I would say if you know that you have difficulty walking or you get out of breath or whatnot easily, stay by the front door, call for a ride, call for assistance. But, walking over there, unfortunately, and these people do exist in our community, some criminals would view that as a chance or a chance to target somebody as opposed to helping them, unfortunately.
What are your thoughts about carrying a concealed weapon? I mean, this is Florida, and for some people that makes them feel safe. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, first of all, I think you have to be willing to have mastered it, and you also have to be honest with yourself. Are you prepared to use it in dire straits? The state statute has allowed you to get the vehicle, the actual firearm, take the class. However, you're taught in the class that you're only supposed to use it during a life or death or exigent circumstance that would allow you to have to use it. Now that's all in your interpretation of what you feel. You have to use it. But if you know that you're not quite where you were when you first got the license, maybe your motor skills aren't as fine as they once were, maybe you're not as agile as you once were with carrying it. Maybe if you got it tucked between 15 things in your purse, that's 15 things you got to go through to get it. So I don't think the bad guy's going to wait for you to do that. So what preparations have you made as you aged? What have you changed your techniques to be proficient in it? I always tell people, if you have one in your home and you're married, your spouse needs to be equally as confident in that firearm as you are. Before if something was to happen to you, then they could pick up and continue the battle if it needed to be that way. So a lot of that comes into play. That we've been to many people's homes where they say, you know what, my husband's dead, I don't want the guns anymore, I'm gonna let them go. We recommend that, that we can take possession of them, we will destroy them, we don't sell them, they don't go on eBay, we get rid of them, but it's better than someone breaking in your home and stealing it to use it for a crime.
Or against you.
Or against you. Yes.
And I think to sum up what Stanley's saying, if you're going to own a firearm, own it responsibly.
Mm-hmm.
So be honest with yourself, be cognizant of where it's at, that it's secure, and that you are handling it and being proficient in it and being responsible with it.
Some great information. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can report crime efficiently and also relate information to the law enforcement. We'll be right back with Vital Living Forum. Hi everybody, welcome back to Vital Living Forum. In this segment, we're going to talk about your role as a witness in reporting crimes. And joining me, of course, are Sergeant Jules Brace and Master Deputy Stanley Murray with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. And one of the things that's important as a witness of crime is being able to remember accurately what you saw. What are the best ways to help you do that?
Well, we always tell people that certain things on a person just never change. The clothing, it's good if you get the clothing. However, we know now that a lot of suspects wear multiple clothing, 2 or 3 t-shirts, 2 or 3 pair of pants, whatever, right? So we always tell them, listen, look at the things on them that probably won't change. Grade their height to your height. Trying to figure it out. You know how tall you are, so if they're taller than you, then you can be able to give a better accurate of that. If they have a tattoo that says, I love mama on their forehead, we need to remember that. I love mamas on their forehead. Things like that are not going to go away by the time we catch up with these people. Vehicles, maybe you don't remember what kind of car it is, but is it a 2-door or a 4-door car? If there's something on it, maybe there was a dent on the bumper, or there was a crack in the back window, or simple things like that. You may not be able to remember the actual tag information or things like that. Also, when you're thinking of multiple people, if you can maybe channel it to one person. It's hard to remember what 3 people look like. Channel to one particular person because maybe he reminds you of someone. All right, and you channel that one person and describe them as best that you can. We also offer, we'll have them out on the table, some what we call cheat sheets that we give to our convenience stores. And on it has the person's height, weight, all that. It has if they have a particular gun. Do we know the difference between a revolver and a semi-automatic? Most of us remember the old 38s from back in the day, some of the Elliot Ness movies in that case, but now they have the ones from Lethal Weapon where they shoot multiple rounds out of the gun. You have to change the magazines and put those in. There's a difference between all that. But at the end of the day, if you can do anything else, just make sure that you're able to pinpoint one particular person and something that really, really stands out to help you remember them.
And if something happens, I think the fresher the memory, the better the memory. Mm-hmm. So if you see somebody, as soon as you can get to a pen and paper and write down as much information as you can. And like Stanley said, you want to look at things that don't change quickly. So certainly we're interested in their age, their height, their weight. If they have any special characteristic, colors of eyes, color of skin can be pertinent, whether they're fair skinned or darker skinned or whatever. So write down, even the haircut is something that won't change quickly. They have long hair, short hair, a crew cut. That's the sort of things that we would want you to write down quickly so that when law enforcement arrives, you'll have it available.
And if I might add, also take that pen and paper, place it somewhere that you normally sit. We're going back to now to the shrubbery around your home. If your bushes are too high, you can't see what's happening in front of your house. You may hear people screaming or hear people hollering, you hear gunshots, but you missed it all because your shrubbery was too high. Place it, trim it down, but also wherever you normally sit in your home, where you see what goes on in front of your house, We remember the old show where we used to watch Bewitched, and this lady's name was Mrs. Kravitz. She was very, very community oriented. If she didn't watch any house, she watched one house, right? But she definitely knew everything that went on in her neighborhood. So those are the kind of people that we're asking that you continue to be, because it is your neighborhood. You know more about your neighborhood than we would ever learn. And we even tell our young deputies that go out, listen, just like you know Pookie the dope man, I need you to know Miss Johnson, because she make a mean potato pie. So those are the kind of things we're trying to get them oriented into doing as well, that you all feel comfortable reaching out to us, talking with us. If you see us driving by, flag us down, stop, say, hey, how long you been with the agency? How long you been a deputy? Well, I've been here 40 years. My name is Miss Johnson, and you need to know who I am. That's good things for them to know, because if nothing else, it's building those kind of relationships that those deputies are going to make sure if I can't do anything else, I'm going to make sure Ms. Johnson's doing good, Mr. Williams is doing good, Mr. Smith is on place. Those are the great things we're asking for our community.
And it's, in essence, that's community policing. And that's what we're looking for in law enforcement. Being aware of who's in the community, all people, you know, and what's going on in the community. That helps us be more effective in assisting you all.
Speaking of Mrs. Kravitz, how do you know what is suspicious activity and what is a crime in progress? I mean, how do you determine that and be able to communicate that to law enforcement?
Well, with our residents, sometimes, you know, they may think, well, it's not that it's suspicious activity, I don't want to bother the police. We work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We get paid to be out there to handle any type of situation that you deem necessary for law enforcement to be involved. So we always tell people, if you know your neighborhood, you know what stands out. You know if some guy's looking in a window and doesn't live there, something's not right. So make the call. We'll figure it out. Maybe it was a nephew that was supposed to come check the house, and the people are out of town, and we find that out. That's fine. We can work through all that, but not calling is one of the biggest things we tend to have a challenge with. And then when we get there, that resident will say, well, I just didn't want to bother the police, and we didn't. Well, that's what we get paid to do, to ride around and be your nosy neighbors for you. So feel free to call us at any time. And when you see something that just sparks up in you, then you already know. You've been on this earth a lot longer than most of us, so you know kind of what's going on. And so don't feel that you have to reserve yourself simply because you may feel that I'm not sure. That's what we get paid to do, just decipher all that.
And I would say err on the side of caution. You know, if it doesn't feel right to you, go ahead and make that call. You know, we'll assess in the information that you're giving us how we prioritize it, but we will still respond and check it out for you.
And with that, let me add, we prioritize our calls. It's either a 3, a 2, or a 1. 1 means it's not that big of a deal to a point that you just saw something. Maybe you say, you know what, there's a bird on top of my house kind of thing, right? The second thing you'll probably hear is you'll say, well, you know what, there's a guy standing in my yard. However, he's just standing there, but just something doesn't look right. He looks dazed, he looks out of whack. We'll start coming. Third thing is, there's a guy standing in my yard. He's reaching in his back pocket. He just pulled out a gun. Now, when you call, we're going to keep you on the phone the whole time. We're going to ask you the same question maybe a couple of 100 times, right? That's okay. The reason we're doing that is because we're dispatching deputies to come, and the scenario could change at any second. So we're keeping you on the phone to make sure the information is still the same, still current, still moving. He hasn't moved. He's still in position. He's still where he's supposed to be. When we finally tell you to get off the phone, it's because we're probably already in the area now. And we may say, you know, you step back or you move back from where you are, and we're coming in to do what we have to do. So don't feel that you're being tampered with because we're asking you the same thing. It's a repeated thing that the dispatchers are taught to do. It's not to say that you're not giving the right information. It's just making sure the information is correct because it's going to multiple people.
So if there is a strange person in my backyard, do I call 911 or do I call the non-emergency number?
Well, if they're in your backyard, I would just go ahead and make the 911 call.
911.
Okay.
Because you didn't authorize them, you didn't invite them, and they weren't licensed to be there. So technically, they're semi-trespassing because you didn't have them there. Now, let's say he jumped the fence because he threw a football over in your yard. Okay, we can work through that. We'll figure that out eventually. But that type of call, I think you shouldn't wait on, because if they made it to your yard, next thing they're to your door, next thing they're in your house. So you don't want to play with that kind of call.
And we say 911 because situations like that can change dynamically. So you know, it could be in your backyard, and like Stanley just said, it can rapidly come into your house. So we want to know that information immediately.
When do you call the non-emergency number?
Well, let's say you're non-emergency call. You may say, you know what? There's a vacant house, and we saw yesterday, you know, 2 guys in the driveway. Well, those 2 guys are back. They're not in the house, but they're in the driveway. We don't know. Maybe the house is for sale. But go ahead and make that call so we can start heading in that direction. Now, that could change too. Those 2 guys now got out of the car. They just broke a window out. It changes dramatically on that right there.
And I would say non-emergency is over with things like, say you came home and noticed that your kid's bike was stolen, or you know the house had already been broken into with nobody around. That's not necessarily an emergency, because whatever's happened's already happened. You know, anytime you're dealing with people live, it's dynamic and it can change at any time. So we want to get that information quickly.
But our dispatchers are trained. If you did call 911, they can help decipher from what you provide. And that's a big thing about neighborhood watch programs. We actually come out and help teach you how to properly call and report to our dispatchers the proper information.
I want to quickly ask a question about if you're in an emergency and you are the victim of a crime, or you're having a medical emergency. How precise are cell phones in finding you these days? Because that's what everybody's pretty much using, even seniors.
They vary.
Yes.
Okay.
Depending on the service you have, your service provider, also where you are in relationship to the towers. We have people who have made calls down in the south side of Orange County, but the tower picked up in Osceola County. So it can vary on that. It's not a guarantee every time.
The home phones are much more precise because it's linked to an address.
To an actual address.
So if you have a cell phone, be sure to give us an address so we know where you're at, because as Stanley said, it pings from the towers, so we're not quite sure exactly where you're at.
Yeah. My 17-year-old has started driving, praise God. With that being said, I tell him all the time when he's driving, every time you cross an intersection, know what intersection you're crossing. Know what street you just passed, because if something were to happen, at least you have that information. You know, I'm 2 streets from Curry Ford and Cimarron. That's a better opportunity for us to find you than, I don't know, I'm on Cimarron. Well, that could be from, you know, Seminole County
Right.
down all the way down to, you know, the airport.
Yes.
So that's a lot to cater to. So think about those things when you're driving. It's back to awareness and remembering where you are. And those are good things too also for your mind. I mean, we talk about mental health sometimes, and my mother had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and I saw the dwindling of the effective information of knowing where she was, who she was. And so those things are so that kind of helps you keep your mind trained to where you're supposed to be, and how you'll know, this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not the dirt road back in '76 when I drove around here, right? It's now a full-fledged highway. So those kinds of things help you.
I want to thank you for being with us and sharing the information. This is information you cannot hear enough. So thank you very much. And thank you to our studio audience for being with us today. And thank you for watching the Vital Living Forum on senior safety. We're glad you were with us, and we'll see you next time.